Hi, welcome to the Candidates Forum. I'm Deanne Healy. The forum is designed to connect residents with folks running for elected position here and for you to get to know them a little bit better and the positions that they have. So joining me now is Jaclyn Corriveau, who's running for Councilor-at-Large. Welcome, Jackie.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, excellent. So, I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions just to get a kind of sense of, why you wanted to get involved, what you see as some issues facing the city and what you can do about it. So let's just start off. What motivated you to throw your name into the ring and want to be a counselor for the city?
Sure. So I've lived in Peabody my whole life for 35 years in South Peabody. I've grown to love it. It's my home, and I really care about the condition of the city and the quality of life for its residents. So when I heard Tom Gould and Ryan Melville were hanging up their hats, I decided it was the right time to step forward. I think it's a very important race this year because we have a lot of important things coming down the pipeline. We have a new high school that we have to pay for. Mm-hmm. We have roads that need to be paved. We have quite a few projects, especially the downtown, that needs some attention as well. So I think we need people on the council who are willing to make difficult decisions, not be afraid to speak up when it's necessary, and really put the work in. I've knocked roughly 3,600 doors, talked to many, many people.
I heard you're looking for a new pair of shoes.
Yes. That was that's been the running joke. And I actually did get a new pair of New Balances last week, and I'm very happy with them.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, when I speak to people, they really want someone who's going to return their phone calls, someone who really cares about what they care about. So my platform is what the people want, and with the feedback I've gotten. So that's why I decided to run, because I'm someone who listens, and I'm someone who always is going to take feedback and do what's right for the constituents.
Okay. And before we get into some of the issues itself, what do you think in your experiences that you bring to the table that will help you in formulating decisions on the council level?
Sure. So I have a degree in government from Simmons University. I graduated in 2013. I am a lifelong resident of the city. I have an intimate understanding. I have great relationships with people like you that work with the chamber. I have great relationships with our current elected officials. And I think taking that consultative approach is going to be very important to making these decisions, especially when it comes to budgeting, especially when it comes to those difficult decisions where sometimes you have to say no. And my experience in that way, I think, will be very helpful. I also care a lot about people, and I think that personal touch gets lost sometimes in all the work. I'm a licensed foster parent. I work with foster kids also as a court advocate appointed by a judge. So I really put in the time to try to help people who need it. And I think we need more of that because not everybody has the wherewithal or capacity to reach out when they need help. And knocking on doors and getting to know the constituents is a great way to know how much outreach you need to do and how proactive that you need to be. And I want to be a proactive counselor. I don't want to be a reactive counselor.
Right. So you've been mentioning how many doors you've been knocking on and folks you've been talking to over the last couple of months. What are some of the issues that you're hearing from folks that they really want you to, focus on if you were elected?
Sure. So getting closer to the race, people are definitely tuning in more over the past few weeks. But it's been a plethora of issues. People are very disappointed when they don't get phone calls back regarding their sidewalk. I knocked on the door, and I mentioned this last night, of a woman who's in her 80s. She had been asking for several years for someone to respond to her phone call about her sidewalk. It still is in very bad condition, and she fell, and she ended up getting banged up as a result. There was another woman who had a city pipe back up into her house, and that caused a lot of issues, and it was a struggle for her to get a response. And I know we're all busy. I know that, City Hall does the best they can. Anytime I call, usually I get a phone call back. But I'm someone who they might know my name. And so if someone's never had to do this before, I can't imagine how difficult it must be to have to navigate that system. And so I really think it is the job of the city council and our elected officials to bridge that gap.
Do you think being a counselor at large versus a ward counselor, do you see people reaching out to you more or less?
More. I walk my two dogs down the street at least twice a day.
Okay.
And people are definitely approaching me and letting me know. Most recently, my neighbor noticed a very large branch that had broken off and was hanging from his tree. And he did call the tree department, and he did get a call back, and they're coming to fix it for him. So people are letting me know of issues, definitely.
Okay.
I'm getting a lot of feedback, I guess is the best way to put it.
As a counselor at large, you have the role to look at the city as an entirety versus a ward counselor. They still do have that role, but more focused on their neighborhood. How do you try to balance that? When issues come up that you see something that might be good for the city, but maybe the ward counselor doesn't want it in their ward. How would you deal with something like that?
I think that comes down to what I was mentioning before, is having those relationships, taking that consultative approach, talking to people in the neighborhood. What works in Ward 6 might not be good for Ward 1. They're two very different neighborhoods and two very different wards. So having that line of communication open from the city to the ward counselor and the residents, and balancing those things and looking at each individual situation in its own light.
Okay. One of the things you had mentioned was, not folks, being frustrated that, the streets aren't paved, the sidewalks are in poor condition, and certainly the city relies on state and federal money to repair a lot of those things. With the type of, with the way the budget is right now for the city, expenses go up just like our own households every year. How do you propose managing that if folks don't want to see their real estate taxes go up? What approach would you take?
Sure. So I've been thinking a lot about this, and I have relationships with people, across the state that work in government. Those are the relationships that I've built. And just as an example, the city of Taunton, which is very similar to Peabody and consistently compared with us from a demographic basis, actually increased their grant funding by 800% over the past few years. So, Governor Baker would always say, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You can look at what works in another town, and he was referring to school systems at the time when he said this, but you can modify it and make it work here and see how it would benefit the residents here. So I'm a big fan of looking at comparable cities like Taunton, seeing what they're doing to manage their budget, and they also have, they're ranked number 4 in successful investments. They went from $400,000 invested to I believe it's $22 million.
Oh, wow.
So they have been enormously successful in bringing in revenue without raising taxes. So if we can be creative and we can look at what's working elsewhere in comparable municipalities, I think that's going to be a key element to keeping taxes manageable for the residents. And as far as paving the roads and taking care of the sidewalks, I'd like to take a look at how we're prioritizing. Are we prioritizing based on need? Is there a system in place that ranks the streets based like that or the sidewalks based like that? Or are we kind of going about it as the calls come in? So I'd like to take a look at that as well.
Yeah, that's fair. What would your approach be to managing growth of the community and development while preserving the community character of Peabody?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not against development. I am against overburdening our infrastructure, our police, our fire, again, our roads and our sidewalks, and adding to the traffic congestion. So I think we need to be careful about what type of development we bring in and where we put it.
Okay.
There are some great places we can put single-family homes, condos, townhomes that are low impact on traffic congestion and the current residents. One place I'd love to see housing added in low density is downtown, because that would increase foot traffic. It would increase visitation to our downtown businesses, and it would really liven up the downtown as a whole and not just make it a pass-through. I think some additional senior housing might be in order. I'd like to look at the industrial parkway as a possibility for that, so we can keep our seniors in Peabody if we prioritize our own seniors to move into those units.
Sure. Just circling back to downtown for a moment and adding potential housing down there. Where do you see that happening? Is it new buildings? Is it adding floors to existing buildings? Have you thought about that?
I think the city needs to kind of look outside and see who's looking to build, what they're looking to build, and kind of market downtown Peabody as an opportunity. We have quite a few buildings that could use a facelift at the very least, and I think it's an opportunity to put something there that's low density, something that looks nice, and something that would drive foot traffic and more people to our business, our downtown.
I knew what you mean. There have been some projects over the years where folks have wanted to redevelop a building, and the council has put a number of special conditions in order to make that happen, which I think has maybe scared off some developers because if they buy a building, they don't know what they're going to be dealing with. How do you feel about that in terms of making it difficult for outside investors to come in downtown?
We have to look at what their intentions are and, look at each individual project in its own right. I'd really have to know the details
Sure.
in order to make a judgment call. But I think it's well within reason for the city council to put reasonable restrictions on people that are looking to make a profit off of our city.
Right. What do you, one of the things we talked about, or you touched on a little bit earlier, was the communication. Some residents feel like they are not getting the information out of City Hall. Maybe they don't understand the thought process or the process that went into making a particular decision. Speaking with a couple other, candidates earlier, it was very clear that, decisions aren't made quickly. They're often, they see the end result at a city council meeting when a vote is being taken, but they don't realize how much information has gone into it behind the scenes to get to that meeting. How do you try to open that up to residents so they are, to your point, more transparent about the process of what factors are being considered before a recommendation is being made?
Sure. So you took the word right out of my mouth. I think it's transparency and communication. I think, if you have an issue that's affecting a specific neighborhood, it's really important that the residents understand what the process is for the decision, what the motivation behind the decision will be, and how they can meaningfully and appropriately participate in making their feelings known to the council before the decision is made. And that's not to say that this doesn't already happen. I think in many cases it does, but there are situations where the residents feel that maybe they could have had some more input and that transparency was an issue. And I know that, a lot of the times when you call City Hall and ask for things, there is that kind of, I don't want to say misunderstanding, but sometimes whoever's picking up the phone at City Hall may not know that they should explain the process to someone. And then the person on the other end gets frustrated. And I think all intentions were good. But sometimes it's just that understanding that you kind of have to bridge that gap.
Sure.
And I think that's a really good way for our elected officials to step in and bridge that gap for the residents between City Hall.
Going into 2026, what do you think are the top 3 issues facing the city?
Taxes, paying for the new high school. I do think we need a new high school. The bill is going to be very high for that, so we're going to have to figure out how to pay for it. And developing the downtown and developing the industrial parkways so that we can diversify our tax base and in turn help pay for things like a new high school.
What would you like to see happen with the Rousselot property downtown?
I've thought a lot about that. We talked about it a little bit last night on You Make the Call, and there was some talk of a forgetting the word. It's a transportation trucks. I'm forgetting the word, but I think you know what I mean. It could be the potential for logistics. It's a logistics company. That's the word I was looking for. I'd be open to that. I'd have to, know what kind of vehicles they'd be using. There's a broad array of vehicles from 18-wheelers down to box trucks.
Sure.
What the schedule would be, what their permitting would look like for that schedule. And I've also heard that a water treatment plant could go in there. I know there's a contamination issue there potentially because they were making Kodak film there for a while. So there's a number of things that I know are being tossed around about what to do with that property. The one thing I wouldn't want is housing.
Okay. Great. We are coming up towards the end of our time. What do you think makes you different than other candidates who are seeking a Councilor-at-Large position?
Sure. Thank you for that question because I think it's really important. You do get to vote for up to 5 of us. I want to make that clear to everybody. So you don't have to pick just one.
Right.
But I think it's a pretty good indicator of how hard someone works in a campaign, of how hard they're going to work when they're elected. I've made a lot of great friendships and relationships just based on my door knocking, spending time at the senior center, going to events. I love to talk to people about, what they think the city should do and what they think the city needs. And some of the issues that they're facing as residents. So I think that does set me apart. All of the conversations I've had, all of the work that I've put in, and it's been a joy, to be completely honest. Everyone has been so nice, and they are so happy to see someone who's taking the time to listen to them, because I think that's really what elected government is about. It's about representing the best interests of our residents, especially at the local level. We're on the front lines. We're the first, level of government that people have access to. Our phone numbers are on the website. People know where we live. And, that could be a good thing or a bad thing sometimes, but people should feel free to reach out. And I think that really sets me apart, that I've done the work to make the connections and to really pay attention to what is important to people in this city, because it's about the residents. It's not about the people
Right.
And the politicians who are elected.
Right. And I think you make a good point is they want to be heard. And it doesn't mean just because you're heard, it means that, you're going to get your way, because there's many different ways to get to a certain end result. But I think people want to just be acknowledged that that they have an opinion or that they have a concern about something. So,
Absolutely.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on tonight that you wanted to share with the general public?
Not really. I think you covered most of the issues that everyone's been talking about. I'll be number 6 on the ballot. I'd like to ask for one of everyone's 5 votes for Councilor-at-Large. And if you can't go on November 4th, early voting starts on the 27th. And you
Great
can also
reminder.
vote by mail.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you for sitting down with me tonight,
course.
Jaclyn, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate it.